Good evening. All through this week, the issue of state-owned entities, and in particular Eskom, has been on the agenda. So has the national debt. First, the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, announced how Eskom will change, and that it will be broken up into 3 groups by the end of March next year. Then yesterday, during his medium-term budget policy statement, the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni said he would still prefer to sell South African Airways, and that government was simply subsidising the rich and the middle class by bailing it out. At the same time, there are major problems at other state-owned entities. Denel needs money. Others are also battling. Tonight we're discussing these issues and trying to find out how different approaches might resolve some of these problems. We'll also have a look at the national debt figures that were announced during the medium-term budget policy statement yesterday. Pule Mabe is the national spokesperson of the African National Congress. He's with me in our Joburg studios. Ashur Sarapan is the spokesperson on some of these issues for the Opposition Democratic Alliance and a member of Parliament for that party. Now, before I begin, I must just tell you that while we have Pule Mabe in our studio, there have been some developments tonight. You might have seen them around the chair of the ANC, the Energy and Mineral Resources Minister Mantashe. He said in the Sunday World this weekend that he had paid 2 journalists to squash a story about his relationship with a younger woman. Mantashe has now said that he met with the SA National Editors Forum and has retracted that claim. Pule, good evening to you. What are you able to tell us about this meeting with SANEF?
Well, evening, Stephen. Well, it's quite welcomed. The minister, who is also the national chair of the ANC, had met with SANEF and have been able to refute the issues around the bribery, retracted that kind of a statement, and again restated his own commitment to media freedom, that the media must be able to operate freely without fear or favor, and that to demonstrate that commitment is also going to be going to that commission that is looking into the issues around media ethics and all of that. This is commendable. It means that he is willing himself. He didn't have to wait. Just in a matter of days, he was already out there meeting with the South African National Editors Forum, restating his commitment to press freedom. Because the commitment of the ANC is that you guys in the media must be allowed to operate freely.
Okay, but it does look like he lied. I mean, he must have lied to the Sunday World to get himself into this position. Basically, what he's admitted today is that he did lie.
Well, he has retracted that statement. I think when anyone, Stephen, even if it's you, if you go out and retract a statement that you would have made, and upon realizing what would also have become its own effect in the life of a nation, that must be commendable. The national chair has gone out on his own accord, retracted a statement, met with a body that is meant to represent the interest of various print media outlets. And in that meeting, the editor of the Sunday World was also present. SANEF has also issued their own statement. The minister himself has also issued a statement as well, trying to characterize the spirit and mood under which that meeting took place.
Look, I realise you aren't the minister and you have to speak on behalf of the ANC in these matters, and he's the chair, but I mean, he lied. I mean, it seems the ANC, you used the phrase, retract the statement. I think most people would say he clearly lied.
Well, he has retracted the statement, and I'm sure, look, Stephen, there's a process that he's going to be participating in which deals with media ethics. And I'm sure that his participation there would be able to paint a picture and all of that. I suggest we leave the issues there so that we are not preemptive of what would become the outcomes of a commission that he will still be appearing before, which he has volunteered to himself.
Okay, I'm sure there will be big discussions about it, and I'm sure there'll be a reaction to it as well. Let's now start on the conversation that we had invited you in for today about the medium-term budget policy statement, some of the interventions around SOEs. But let's start with the national debt. And I think for most people, one of the scary numbers was that the national debt is increasing more quickly than most people had realized.
Well, Stephen, you're correct. It is becoming a bit unsustainable, to use the words of the Minister of Finance yesterday. I mean, if in 3 years the national debt would sit at around 71% to GDP, that must be worrying. It means that if we do not make certain policy choices, we will be unable to deal with our own growing social challenges. We'll be unable to create the jobs we need. We might be unable to even carry our own social security policies. The number of beneficiaries who now sit at over 17 million. What this means is that we need drive forward a reimagined industrial plan. Make sure that we create our jobs. We encourage people to spend money where they live. I've made this point even when I was with you on Monday, modernize the network industries. This is your Eskom, SOEs, transport and the telecommunication space. We need to move with speed to deal with the whole question of spectrum allocation so that that again becomes an important lever of economic stimulus. I mean, if you look at some of your smaller countries in the continent compared to the size of South Africa, if you see their forecast and growth is much higher than what our projections would be. And Minister Mboweni himself is saying that we need to make certain policy choices so that we can turn the situation around. We in the ANC said, when we said towards the end of September at Al Khotla, that we need to make sure that those industries that are able to create, that could carry larger numbers, what we call a labor-intensive industries like your mining, like your agriculture, like your tourism, we should be able to make sure that there is greater focus there. Because when we increase jobs in those industries, we also increase the amount of tax that the state is able to collect. It is only through that, amongst others, that you will be able to deal with your recurring national debt.
All right. Ashol Sarapan in our Cape Town studio in Sea Point tonight for the Democratic Alliance. How do you see the national debt problem? I mean, obviously, economic growth is the way out of it. How would you grow the economy?
Well, firstly, there's got to be a strong focus on job creation. And the fact that the economy has failed to grow over the last 12 years or so, even in a favorable global environment after the 2008 crisis, tells us that there is something fundamentally wrong with the nature of the economy. And it shows us that we're not tracking what global growth was. Historically, if you match South African economic growth to global growth, you find a correlation, except over the past 12 years, which means the policy decisions that have been taken up to now have stunted growth. And we've just seen the introduction of more uncertainty in the so-called New Dawn. We've seen things like expropriation being put on the table, which deters investors. We've seen proposals around nationalization of the Reserve Bank. None of these things are going to get the investments that Pule Mabe spoke about into this economy. They just scare off investors. They do not show that the country is seriously committed to growth, and it maximizes rather than minimizes policy uncertainty. And of course, we get to energy supply. You cannot grow an economy without stable energy supply. There's a hard ceiling to growth in this economy. That's 2% per annum, because we just don't have the energy to grow the economy. Eskom will not be able to generate the energy we need quickly enough for industrialization, for any of the things that the ANC is speaking about. It's an existential threat to our economy. And its debt, 450 billion rand, is of course part of what is quickly becoming a national debt crisis. The reality of the matter is that the Parliament has just passed a 59 billion rand special appropriation, and that special appropriation has taken the deficit to GDP from 4.9 to 6.1%. And effectively, the government is using one credit card to pay off Eskom's credit card. It's just completely unsustainable and not getting us onto a growth path.
All right, we have seen big plans to change Eskom. It will be split into 3 parts by the end of March, we're told. You don't need me to tell you that, Ashol. I mean, do you think that that's going to make a difference? Are we going to have power stations that will, we understand, compete against each other? Surely all of that is proof that some reforms in the works?
Well, yes, but the reality is that it doesn't solve the fact that we have excessively expensive energy. It doesn't answer some serious questions around Eskom's debt and how it's going to restructure the debt. The white paper was supposed to come at the end of September. It's now the end of October. We're still actually waiting for the formal white paper on this. I have not seen it. And so it's a sign in the right direction. The DA first proposed the unbundling of Eskom many years ago with the intention that what you need to do is, of course, keep the national grid as a state-owned asset. And it is a state-owned asset, and it is something that is a public good. But generating capacity needs to be privatized. And we're not seeing any commitment to the National Treasury strategy around privatizing energy and diversifying away from coal. We've seen Medupi and Kusile come in well over budget, and there have been all sorts of cost overruns there. We're not seeing a commitment to get a lot of these things back on track. What we are seeing is Eskom saying year in and year out that their increases aren't enough, to the point where we've gone from some of the cheapest energy prices in the world to a point where the Minister, Greta Mantashe, himself said that energy costs are a threat to the economy as well and hindering growth quite badly. So while the proposal to break Eskom up is a step in the right direction, it doesn't seem to be heading in the long-term right direction.
Pule Mabe from the ANC, I mean, we keep being told of a new dawn for Eskom, and yet there seems to be problems, delays. We still don't know who the CEO is going to be. Is there political infighting at the top? Are there ministers and people having a fight about what's going to happen at Eskom?
Well, Stephen, I can assure you that the commitment is there in the ANC to make sure that we give our SOEs the necessary support through the political leadership in government, our ministers, members of the executive. The idea to split out Eskom parcel out Eskom into three, make sure that there is a unit that deals with distribution, one that deals with transmission, and the other one that deals with energy generation. Part of it is to make sure that you begin putting Eskom on a path of turnaround, and you make sure that it becomes efficient as a reliable producer of power. You know, because if you don't do that, how will you know whether these measures that you are undertaking will work or not? You know, we have done all the analysis. You know, what the DA is saying, we have done that analysis already. And we have come to a determination that unless we take certain radical steps, parceling out these different units, we might not be able to solve the energy crisis in this country. And we also said, I mean, the very integrated resource plan begins to also start imagining an energy mix and saying what are the other energy options that you could have so that you deal with some of the challenges that could be there within Eskom, whether it's load shedding, whether it's your ability to be able to continue financing, because you can't just continue financing Eskom. At some point, Eskom itself has got to be sustainable. But this also requires citizens themselves to pay for their own services. Because if citizens don't pay for their own services, this is what happens. Increasing the national debt is not the creation of the state. No. People themselves, by not paying for their own services, are not helping the state. Because the state has got to continue borrowing so that it is able to fulfill its own obligations and be able to service the people that put it into power.
The National Union of Mine Workers said yesterday, they issued a statement, and they said this, quote, that if Eskom is broken up, it will, here's where the quote starts, plunge the country into darkness. This is not a threat, this is a promise, end quote. That's what they said. How do you react to that comment? Do you see that as irresponsible from the National Union of Mine Workers to say that?
Well, what is going to have to happen is that at the level of the alliance, we've got to make sure that we all put shoulder to the wheel, we work together, attend to all of the challenges that might be there. So if for instance, our alliance partner in the NUM through COSATU have identified certain issues which they believe, if not attended to, they might make it impossible for us to drive the kind of growth trajectory that we're envisaging. It is important that they file that, so that together as alliance partners, we could be able to say, what are the kind of measures that we need to be implementing? I think what we now need, whether it's in the DA or any other political party that exists in this country, we need to all be at one. If there is a time when we must all be together, it's now. For us to make sure that we drive the future of this country further forward, we save generations to come, we need to be together. But we must also accept that some of the problems are natural. I mean, there's also the question of climate change. How do we work towards creating a carbon-efficient economy? Okay, making sure that under the climatic conditions, we could also still be able to survive. Otherwise, people are going to march to the Tule House and demand that we make rain.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to push you on the National Union of Mine Workers. Will you condemn that statement, that threat that we will, or promise as they call it, that they will plunge the country into darkness?
Well, before we even go into the state of whether we condemn or not, it is important that at the level of our leadership, we have an engagement and understand where they are coming from. That is the most, because we are the leader of the alliance. If there are other partners in the alliance who have got a certain reservation about the certain approaches that we are taking, it is only fair that we bring them on board, understand what informs the positions that they are taking, and how do we work together. Because we have got a crisis, we need to make certain policy choices. And unfortunately, the policy choices that we've got to make, some of them are going to be unpopular.
Okay, we're with Pule Mabe, the national spokesperson of the African National Congress. He's in our Joburg studios. Ashur Sarapan is the Democratic Alliance's spokesperson on these issues in Cape Town. We'll continue the conversation. Should SAA be saved or not? That'll be part of the conversation. Stay with us.